My neighbor keeps leaving her kids in my yard and expects me to babysit her kids every day because I work from home. So I called CPS. She was shocked at what I did when they arrived. Hi, my name's Jessica. I'm 34 years old and I live in a quiet, tree-lined suburb just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. I work remotely as a data analyst for a mid-sized tech company. After nearly a decade of living frugally, saving carefully, and saying no to almost every whim, I finally bought my first home last year. It is a modest 2-bedroom ranch with a little fenced-in backyard, the kind of place that feels like a sanctuary. I take a lot of pride in it. I have no kids by choice and I truly enjoy my space and my peace, especially since working from home means I spend nearly every hour here. I moved in last August and kept to myself for the most part. I nodded at neighbors, exchanged the occasional polite smile at the mailbox, and took weekend walks around the block. That's how I first noticed Dana. She lives in a house directly next to mine, a slightly run-down rental with a creaky porch and a half-broken tricycle always tipped over near the steps. Dana is 29, a single mom with 2 kids, Lucas, who is 6, and Mia, who is 3. I never really spoke to her beyond surface-level greetings. I gathered from neighborhood chatter and bits I overheard that she worked odd jobs, sometimes overnight shifts, sometimes deliveries. I didn't pry, her life was her own, and honestly, I was just grateful my side of the fence was quiet. But then it started. At first, it was harmless. One Saturday afternoon, Dana knocked on my door and asked if the kids could play in my yard for a bit while she ran to the grocery store. She looked frazzled, hair tied up in a loose bun, one shoe half on, and Mia squirming in her arms. I said yes. I didn't think much of it. I had no weekend calls, the weather was pleasant, and the kids stayed out there for maybe 30 minutes, running around and throwing leaves in the air. Dana returned with a couple of grocery bags, thanked me, and that was that. But then it happened again the next weekend, and the next, and then on a weekday. I would be mid-Zoom call, laser-focused on analytics reports or client data, and I would hear shouting outside. At first, I assumed it was neighborhood noise, but when it became consistent, I checked. Lucas and Mia were in my yard. No knock, no text beforehand, just there. One time, I opened the back door and asked Lucas where his mom was. He shrugged and said she went to get something real quick. I checked my phone and saw a message from Dana sent about 20 minutes prior. Hey, just drop the kids in your yard for a bit. Be back soon. It became routine, almost daily. Sometimes she texted, sometimes not, the kids would just appear. I work 8 to 9 hours a day from home, often with back-to-back calls and deadlines. My job requires deep focus, the kind of focus that gets completely shattered when a toddler starts crying outside or when a 6-year-old launches a basketball into your rose bush. I try to be kind. I try to be patient. I reminded myself that parenting is hard, that being a single mom is exhausting, that maybe she didn't have help. So I pulled her aside one afternoon and told her as gently as I could that I was not comfortable with this arrangement. I explained that while I was sympathetic to her situation, I was not a babysitter. I had a full-time job, one that paid for this house and the yard her kids were using. I told her it was becoming distracting, that I could not be responsible for them, that they were too young to be unsupervised. Dana did not take it well. She waved it off, saying it was just an hour and that you're home anyway. She smiled like it was a compliment and said, "You're so good with them." I told her again that I was not watching them, I was working. But she kept brushing off every concern like I was just being difficult. I started to feel uneasy. I installed a Ring camera. I locked the backyard gate, only to find a day later that Lucas had climbed over it and let Mia in through the side. That time, I found them digging in my vegetable garden. Lucas had pulled up the little tomato plant I had been nurturing for weeks, and Mia had thrown dirt onto my back porch. Then it escalated. One afternoon, I came outside and found Mia climbing my fence. She was barefoot, trying to scale the wooden boards like it was a jungle gym. Lucas was nearby, crouched down with something shiny. When I got closer, I froze. He had found my garden shears. I had used them earlier in the day and left them near the bushes, forgetting to store them properly. He was jabbing them into the dirt, inches away from his own knee. That was it. My heart was pounding, not from anger but from fear. If he had hurt himself, really hurt himself, on my property, what then? Would I be held liable? Would Dana sue me? Would Child Protective Services think I was the one neglecting them? I started documenting everything, every text Dana sent, every time the kids were dropped off, every video clip of them being in the yard alone. I took timestamped photos. I made sure my home security camera was always on and facing the backyard. I kept a log of when she left them, when she picked them up, and any dangerous behavior I observed. And then came the day that broke everything. It was a Wednesday. I had a huge presentation that morning, one I had been prepping for all week. My nerves were already frayed. I got up early, dressed up a little even though no one would see me, and made sure my space was quiet, clean, and distraction-free. About an hour into my call, I heard loud crying, not whining, screaming. I muted myself, got up, and looked outside. Mia was sitting in the mud near the garden, soaked and wailing. Lucas was on the porch step, holding his knee and crying quietly, blood running down his shin. I ran outside. Mia had apparently fallen face first into the flower bed. Lucas had tripped on the edge of the porch and scraped his knee hard enough that it was bleeding through his pants. I checked for Dana, no sign of her, no text, nothing. I cleaned them up as best I could and brought them both inside, just so I could keep them warm and contained while I tried calling Dana. No answer. I left a voicemail, then another. 4 hours later, she finally texted, "On my way. Sorry, got caught up." That night, I filed a report with Child Protective Services. I was not looking to ruin someone's life, but I could not take the risk anymore. This was not just inconsiderate, it was neglect. I gave them all the documentation, the texts, the photos, the videos. I made it clear that I was not trying to take custody, I just wanted them to know what was happening, what was being ignored, what was being forced on me without consent.